Well, I may be way off base asking this, but you had mentioned a few minutes ago that we're talking about multi-civilizations, meaning like a bunch of Younger Dryas periods where this could have emanated from before.
Yes.
So could this perhaps go far enough back that we're talking about like Pangea, where all the land was together, and that's how? I
don't believe it's anywhere near that far back.
Okay.
I think we need to, we should just briefly review geologic history.
Sure, let's do it.
Pangea, we're talking millions and millions and millions of years ago. What I'm looking at here, and even though it totally scares the mainstream academics and blows open the timeline of what we think, I do believe that everything I've studied and I've been putting together a timeline of all the tablets and all the archaeological evidence, that our story, instead of being 6,000 years old, and I'm talking civilization, not like hunter-gatherer stuff, our story emerging, like civilization emerging, I believe is more like 200,000 years old.
200,000? No, that's a lot.
Yeah. So
because the Younger Dryas was 12,500 years ago.
That's what I'm saying is I've been uncovering evidence from looking at ice cores from Antarctica as well as Greenland that what we're looking at is not simply one event that occurred around 13,000 years ago, but a cyclical nature of events that happens perhaps every 13, every 20, every 50. We don't know exactly the cycles because like I was talking to Randall Carlson the other day. We had this great conversation where I said, Randall, it seems more like it's cycles within cycles than a cycle. He goes, that's exactly what I've found as well.
So, but does that mean, because the way I've always understood it, and maybe I'm fucked up here, but like the whole idea of like the Younger Dryas is that you had the earth heat up and kill everything and then suddenly, instantly like freeze over, meaning nothing survives. But what you seem to, and again, maybe I'm missing it, what you seem to be saying is that some people do survive.
Yeah, it's the extremes of it cannot be underestimated. So I do want to reiterate that, like Randall talks about, we're looking at events that are awesome, like he says, that are beyond our comprehension, and I agree. But we're also talking about a civilization and people that were way more sophisticated in their understanding than we are. They were mapping the cosmos. They were tracking cycles based on the precession of the equinox of our Earth and tracking how we face different constellations known as the zodiac. And how if you track ages, you can figure out when things are going to happen. They knew all of that. They knew about these events. That's why they created the most elaborate group of underground cities in the world. From Derinkuyuy, Turkey, down through northern Iran, we find areas, and please, anything I say, look up all these things. There's a city called Derinkuyuy that's only one of over 100 underground cities. D-R-I-N, Derinkuyuy. K-U-K-U.
Turkey?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, but that spelling is tough. Anyway, that's one of over
you said?
That's one of over 200 underground cities.
When did you say they found this?
They just found it within the last 80 years.
No shit. I'll put pictures of that in the corner of the screen, and then I'll intersplice a map as well. So
somebody was in there. So this is the story of, for people that don't know. I don't remember the exact date off my head, but it wasn't that long ago. I think it was like 1950 something or 60. But there was a guy in an apartment that was doing a project on his house in that part of Turkey, and he collapsed a wall and literally found an entrance to the largest underground city on Earth. Oops.
Now, how did they build something like that?
That's what's so fascinating. These people knew that these events were so catastrophic they could wipe out their entire civilization. We literally could disappear from history. So they created the most elaborate group of underground cities in the world, creating air shafts, areas to even bring animals down, areas for sleeping, areas for schools, areas for preparing food. It's so advanced that in the door, they have this gigantic round stone they had to roll in front of the door in order to seal off what was inside.
How did they get down there?
They carved the entire thing by hand.
By hand?
By hand. It could house over 20,000 people.
But how do you get down there?
It's now a tourism thing where you can go.
No, I know, but back then, they didn't have an elevator, did they?
No, they walk down these stairs that go down to the ground, and like I said, at the entrance to this entire city, or many cities, not just one, Derinkuyuy is just the biggest. They have this massive multi-ton stone that's round, and you can find it on images. They would roll in front of the door and seal the entire underground area for sometimes, are you ready for this? Potentially hundreds of years. Now wrap your head around that. They had to live down there potentially for hundreds of years. It means entire generations had to live down there.
And you said they built air shafts and everything.
Yes.
But these are people now who are going to be, did they have any light down there, or is it all candlelit?
We don't know those things, but I can tell you that we know that most of them never made it out. That's what's
And
so
how do we know
scary.
that?
Because there's a site right next to them called Gobekli Tepe. And there's a newest one that was right next to it called Karahan Tepe. And what it is like a cosmic library where they have these giant T-shaped multi-ton pillars that were tracking the cosmos. Again, tracking the zodiac. And each pillar has like a depiction of a constellation. Like for instance, one of them, Pillar 43, is the most famous because it has the depictions of the handbags that I love to talk about. But also, it's got the swan or the vulture known as Cygnus, with Deneb, the star at the top, which is like the brightest star in our entire around our solar system. So the strange thing is, they seem to understand aspects of the cosmos that we don't. But getting back to Gobekli Tepe,
and why is that's actually a great segue to that though. Like, why is this so controversial? Within the archaeological world, it seems to me, as a complete outsider, like in the last 50 years or whatever, this could be the wildest thing we've ever found. It's this incredible structure that now has a lot of excavation done, and yet I constantly keep on hearing again from the outside, like the bickering, like, well, no, it doesn't really change history of this or that. So what's the origins of like why people are so like hands up about this?
So what Gobekli Tepe did, and I don't think it's anywhere near as impressive for some of the architecture we're about to talk about with the new sites that are east of it in eastern Turkey. But what makes Gobekli so important is that we know it's not primitive because they have these literally massive T-shaped pillars that were literally multi-ton. So to be able to carve those and then put them in place, aligned with star constellations, we know that they're an advanced people. And I believe they're the same people that made Derinkuyuy, or related to the same group. Now, here's what's so wild about Gobekli.
You believe that, or other people do too?
Many others do as well. What Gobekli Tepe is angering the mainstream community so much for is that, remember that 6,000-year window we talked about?
Yeah.
Where everything has to fall into it?
Yes.
Gobekli Tepe contains more advanced architecture and more advanced concepts and ideas, and shows that it's a civilization that wasn't primitive and nomadic hunter-gatherers, right?
Right.
When they radiocarbon dated, which means that they find organic matter caught between the stones, which, you can get a relatively accurate date, but it's more like a ballpark. What they found is that, it could be a lot older, not younger. What they found is that the Gobekli Tepe is at least, based on the breakdown of the carbon of it, is at least 11,600 years old.
Right.
Now, what that means is, and I say at least because I think it's older than that, but what that means is that, it means that we had a more sophisticated civilization that's more than double as old as we're told ever was supposed to be around.
When you say you think it's older than that, do you think it could have been older than the Younger Dryas at 12 thought? Really?
Why would any civilization be able to build anything during the Younger Dryas? We're talking about something that most of them didn't even survive. For those who don't understand, the Younger Dryas period is this period of glacial to interglacial into the Holocene. The Holocene is this period of time between this Paleolithic period and the Holocene is this period in between called the Younger Dryas. And it's a period of Earth history that is catastrophic. And it's about 1,500 years long. That's what I want people to wrap their heads around. Imagine if here we are, we live like about 100 years. Imagine in our lifetime, there's like one crazy event that goes on and it kills like 1 million people. And everyone's like, oh my God, right? Well, now imagine if you had chaotic events that primarily are at the front end and the back end, but some in between for 1,500 years.
Yeah, everything's dead. So when we say 12,500, is that marking the end of it or the beginning of it?
The end of the Younger Dryas, when we went into a more stable climate, was about 11,500 years ago or so.
And Gobekli Tepe is 11,600. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Actually, I would even go a little bit later. Stabilization, where things were more comfortable on Earth to live, was more like 10,500. So it's about 1,000 years later.
So I understand. You're saying like you don't.
I want to actually change that statement. Yeah, it's about 1,000 years later, I'd say.
So you don't understand how anyone during that time period of that shit going on could have possibly built this. But what would make because I know nothing about this. What would make what's the official term? Carbon what dating?
Carbon dating.
So what would make the carbon dating inaccurate? I mean, I feel like from the outside, it sounds like it would go, when you start going that far back, my head just goes to, well, wouldn't it all get foggy no matter how good the tech is? But like, is that a simple explanation, or is it more complicated?
What they do is they date the breakdown of radiocarbon. So they can date what they do is, and I'm not an expert on this, but they basically date the decomposition of it breaking down. And when they can tell how long that takes based on how it breaks down. And so there's science to it. It's very accurate. The problem is you can't date rock. This is where we're going to get into the issue that's going to continuously come up over and over and over again, is that is the only date we can use as a benchmark. It's a benchmark date. I want to make that clear. It's a benchmark date to say, we know that these advanced civilizations are at least this old because of Gobekli Tepe. That's why they don't like it. It changes the entire narrative of opening up the doors to say, this civilization we know is older. Well, what else is older?
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.